one. I know I usually do this through like the bigger camera on the whole tripod setup and everything. But someone did ask for like a demonstration of not only my rock ID kit, but also, I guess, me going through the process. Well, going through my process, that is. Hopefully I can edit this, because I've only been editing the footage from the other camera, and I have no idea how my editor manages this, so... yeah, my manager equals my old man, my dad. So, there's that. Anyway, so, let's go ahead and, just get right down to it. So, first of all, the kit. This is just, magnifying glass. I actually don't use this one for rocks because this came with the kit, but I've gone far enough in, like, geology, I suppose, that I actually use a proper rock lens. This is good if you don't have a rock lens. Like, just any old magnifying glass can kind of help you see grains, but it can't really give you the good detail close-up that my rock lens does. This is the rock lens that I'm talking about. This cost me a pretty penny, honestly, but it's not probably as expensive as you're thinking. I'll just go ahead and look it up at some point and probably have it show up here on screen. Now, this is how you open it. And you kind of look through that, like, little area. But the thing about rock lenses is you have to hold it right up. I think I've explained this in another video. But for it to be most useful, you have to kind of turn with your back to the natural light, because it works best in natural light. And you have to pretty much get right up there with the rock. Like, hold the lens right up there, and then get up right out there with your eye, and you will see some pretty amazing stuff. But yeah, so that's how that works. Anyway, these are streak plates. So as you can see, I've done quite a few streak tests on these. These are newer though. They're not as messed up as the ones that I used to have in school, because I did a lot of streak tests on those. I have a black one and I have a white one. It's basically just, I think it's like unpolished porcelain, if I'm not incorrect. And that helps you see, like, because one of the ways that you ID rocks is that you scratch them against a streak plate, and then whatever streak they leave behind tells you something about the rock composition, which can actually be... Sometimes it can be missed just by looking at the rock's appearance, because the rock's appearance might tell you something, and then you streak it, and the rock composition itself would not make sense for that kind of streak if you're thinking it's a specific rock already. So, yeah. Now, I'm going to get to the... So, I also have some hardness tests that I do. The hardness test basically just, like, when I say hardness, I mean, like, it basically means how hard is the rock? Can I scratch it? Can the rock scratch some specific type of material, etc.? And this is going by the Mohs hardness scale. This tells you something about the rock's composition as well. So this guy is just copper. If you have a penny, that works too. This is a glass plate. Obviously, be careful with these because they can break. It is glass. Try not to... Your aim is not to, like, crack through the glass. Your aim is to just kind of put some pressure on it to see if it leaves a streak or not, And I think it just showed this one not leaving a streak. Wait, hold on. Yeah, it doesn't seem to... Well, it's going to be a little hard for me to see because it's so reflective. I'll actually show you what happened after I go through IDing all of these guides and to show you guys the process. Anyway, those are the rocks that I'm going to use for this sample video. And there are also rocks that have shown up in my other video because I imagine that I'm going to upload this after I upload my last rock ID video. This is another way of testing the hardness. Iron nail. This is getting up there in terms of hardness. If this doesn't scratch the rock and instead leaves like a sort of silvery sheen on the rock surface, that means that your rock is actually harder than iron. And then the last hardness test that you could run is with steel. That's what this knife is for. This is a steel knife, and you can basically... I'll hold it up close so you can kind of see. Let's see if it focuses. I don't think it's going to be able to. Oh, yeah, it focused. So you can see all those, basically, like all those scratches on the knife. This was basically my only tool for determining hardness for a very long time besides my finger. So yeah, I'm glad that I have this whole kit now. Now I can actually start kind of narrowing it down in even finer like levels of hardness. So yeah, those are my 4 hardness like tests that I have. I basically just work my way up. The first thing that you can use actually is your fingernail. Your fingernail is softer than copper, so you can use that as well. Now this guy is my vinegar dropper. This would normally have like, you could have like 0.01% hydrochloric acid in here, and it would be way less harmful to you, although it would still stay in your clothes. But also vinegar works. I'm using white vinegar because it does bubble. Although you kind of have to wait a little bit while because it's not as reactive as like hydrochloric acid. You can't just, if it doesn't bubble immediately, don't just think that that means that it's not going to react. Just wait a couple minutes, or a couple seconds, I should say. This is a magnet because some rocks have magnetic materials, and this can tell you if it does. It's a really strong magnet too. This is just something that I use to wipe the rocks off when I, like, you know, get vinegar on them, or when I dip them in vinegar, whatever I'm doing that day. And now, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys in the next clip, after the cut, like, basically my process. So, this guy. This is number 1 in the other video, because I basically will have just filmed the other video. Or, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm filming this first. So, yeah, because I felt like it would be more authentic, you know? So, yeah, this guy. First appearance, looks like shale. Basically, because of the characteristic way that this is, like, laid out, it looks like shale. It's got that little platey thing going on, like the layers of rock. I would say immediately just looking at this that it's probably shale. And I know that it's shale because I know where it picked it up from. But I wanted to see what the tests tell me just to help you guys with, like, seeing accuracy. So yeah. I picked this up in Pennsylvania, by the way. I picked this up pretty recently on a walk that I was taking with my folks. So yeah, let's do the streak test. Because I'm not going to be able to show you, like, the hand lens test. I don't think that there's a way for me to show you guys that on camera. That would just be impossible at this point. It would probably be possible, but it would be tricky, and I don't feel like it. Also, there wouldn't be any point to doing that with this rock, because you can literally see how fine the grains are. You're not going to be able to see any of the grains. You might be able to see maybe some quartz shining in there or something else like that with the lens, but that's about it. This is a pretty fine-grained rock. Again, it's shale, so that makes sense. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and do the streak test. I'm going to do it on a clean side so you guys can actually see it. There you go. Leaves a white streak. I have to actually zoom in, like, focus, so it shows you the white streak. Kind of having a hard time because I usually don't film with my phone. But there you go. Then, we're going to do it on the white plate. Ooh, nice. You saw that it left, like, a distinctly black thing? Yeah. So it leaves different color streaks on different ones, you know, which probably makes sense for shale because it's got so many different types of material in there. Shale isn't composed of just one specific type of material. So the streak plate might not really, the streak test might actually not be that useful for shale. But, you know, I wanted to do it anyway. So now let's test the hardness of it. I'm going to go ahead and bring this right up there so you guys can see. You see that? It's a scratch. It literally powdered it as well. Very fine grained. That makes perfect sense for how, like, soft shale usually is. Some versions of shale can be pretty much harder, or, like, surprisingly hard, so it can kind of lead you to mistaken identifications. But usually it's very, like, very small grains that are cemented together over time, and they kind of come apart easier when you scratch them with, like, on purpose, that is. See, even my nail kind of leaves a mark. Pretty, although it's only on the surface, it doesn't actually leave a scratch like the copper does. But anyways, this is still pretty soft. Like, it would have to be around, like, a 2-level hardness to be scratched by copper. So I'm not even going to bother with the plate or anything else because this is already pretty soft. It's going to be scratched by everything. So, usually the right way to do a magnetic test is to just pass your magnet along it and see if it picks anything up or sticks to it. It's not doing anything, so it's not magnetic. And now, this is the interesting part, because you know how I told you that it was shale? Well, actually, the proper identification for this is calcareous shale, which means that it's got, calcium in, like, probably along the surface of the rock. Because it bubbles, and hopefully this shows up properly on the camera. Ugh. Like it fizzes, that is. Wish I could zoom in even more. Let's see if I can. Oof, that's rough. Yeah, it doesn't show up. Oh, you got that? You see the fizzes? Yeah. That's what tells me that this rock has calcium in it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't think it was going to show up on camera. Well, anyway, so yeah, calcareous shale, pretty cool stuff. Just means it was probably deposited in like a still water environment, which, makes sense for shale and it makes sense for calcium being on it. Anyway, so I'm going to put this back on so then I don't lose track of it for the later video. Now, number 2. I'm going to be careful with this sticker because I'm not planning on getting rid of it right away. So, we're going to start with number 2 now. So, yeah. Let's just test the streak. White streak. White streak because it doesn't show up. So, the streak is consistent. So, that means that this is likely all made up of the same material, which is cool. I already know what this is, but I will leave the identification for it as a surprise for after I'm done with all these tests. But I do know what it is because I've already basically run these tests. I usually do my identifications before the big videos, so I don't have to spend all this time showing you guys painstakingly me IDing every single rock, because that would be pretty awkward. For some reason you guys wanted to see that, so I'm showing it to you now. So, well, you guys is a lot of people. It's just one person, but whatever. I'm sure some of you guys were curious too. Gotta be careful as well, not to hurt yourself when you're holding the rock while performing these tests. So, this kind of left a mark on it, but not enough for me to think it was beyond surface level, honestly. Because you pretty easily can just kind of wipe it away. Sometimes it leaves a little streak, quotation marks. But if you can wipe it away, that just means that it's scratching through whatever's on the surface and not actually the rock. So, now, I'm going to go ahead and see. I remember what it is, so I'm just going to go right to the nail. And I want to show you guys something cool, alright? You see this little mark right there that's like all shiny and stuff? That's the nail. That's the nail basically leaving. Yeah. See, that's the nail. Let's focus. Come on, lock in, camera. Ugh, I hate this. I'm trying to show you guys exactly what I'm seeing, and the camera is not. There it is. You see all those shiny little marks in between the white streaks? That's the nail actually rubbing off on and leaving a streak on the rock because it's weaker than the rock. Cool stuff. So yeah, if you see something like that, it is stronger than a nail. Now, is it stronger than a knife? We shall see. I'm trying to... First of all, let me scratch it over here and then I'll show you guys. Oh. Yeah. You see these little scratches? Done by the knife. So it is not stronger than the knife. Cool. Alright, so it's somewhere between these two in hardness. Now, magnet doesn't do a thing. Oop, doesn't do a thing. In case some kid is watching somewhere. Now, This is the really cool part that I want to show you guys. So you'll notice I'm showing it really close to you guys so you can see. Oh my goodness, this phone is killing me. Please focus. Please lock in. Maybe I can't hold it that close, who knows. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and bubble it. I'm going to bring this guy. Oh, a little bit runny. Don't want it to spill vinegar on me, alright. So yeah, I'm going to bring it up close. Guys, come on. Focus, camera. My goodness, this camera is like me in class. Can you, like, what are you doing? Why is it so hard for you to focus, ma'am? Oh, goodness. Anyway, so it's not showing up on camera, but the cool thing about this rock is that it does not fizz when you just put, like, any acid on it or vinegar on it. But on the surface of the rock, without scratching it, nothing happens. But if you powder it, which I'm going to do by just scratching very vigorously with the nail, because the nail does eventually break through with enough, with enough force. You see this little, although it might just, it might be better to show you guys if I cut it with the knife that I know can actually cut it. Please don't do that if you don't have a good grip. In fact, that's probably not safe because if the knife slips, you could really hurt yourself. This knife is extremely sharp. So don't do what I just did. So you see that scratch? Very nice, very obvious. Let's go ahead and put some acid on it. I'm going to try to show you guys what's happening. Ugh. All I caught was the bubble breaking. Ugh, this is really hard for me to actually show you guys what I'm trying to show you guys. Yeah, it's not going to show up on camera. I just basically tried it like 3 separate times. And it's really hard to show up on camera because it just refuses to focus. Until now, when the reaction is already done. Isn't that awesome? But basically, if you basically powder it by scratching it with something that can scratch the rock, and then it fizzes, but it hadn't fizzed when it was just, whole intact, no scratches, it's not calcium, but it does have, it's not a limestone, but it does have calcium in it in some form. What it actually is, in this case, is a dolostone. Or basically, that's just made up of dolomite for the most part. Even the white streaks are dolomite rather than calcium because they have the same kind of reaction. You have to scratch them in order for it to fizz, and that tells you that something is dolomite instead of calcium. They're very closely related in terms of elements. In fact, I think that most, if not all, of its chemical name is the same. But it's just, it's like a polymorph, so it has different forms, different ways of reacting. Maybe there's a difference in the number of atoms or in the inclusion of something. I can't remember exactly. I think dolomite has magnesium while calcium doesn't, if I'm not, mistaken. But yeah, so that kind of means, yeah, dolomite. And in this case, dolostone, because, this is not a pure mineral. This is a sedimentary rock. So, there you go. This is the last one I'm going to show you guys. This is limonite. I already know what it is, so I'm just going to straight up ID it at the very start. This is a really, really interesting rock, though. So, I'll show you guys exactly what I mean. First of all, I want to show you guys the streak. This is what told me that it was definitely not it just immediately pointed me in the direction of limonite, goethite, stuff like that. Which are, oxide rocks essentially. So you see that streak? That's characteristic of limonite or goethite or something along those lines. And I'll explain why my brain immediately went there probably in a future video. It's just basically a lot of this stuff, a lot of my hunches come from, years of being in geology school and having certification and everything. But it might not be immediately obvious. You guys might be thinking, what the heck is limonite and why is it obvious that it would point you that way? And, I'll explain that in another video if anyone is interested. But for now, let's just go with the current ID kit before me. So it's a copper streak. It's got a very earthy scent. If you hold it up, it smells kind of like dirt, Like, you might think all rocks probably smell like dirt. That's true, but it has a very distinctively kind of like in-your-face earthy scent. Kind of makes you think of like, it's hard to explain, but it just makes me think of iron, You can scratch it with a penny and with the nail, which is that's what I wrote in my notes. So I'll show you guys now. Hopefully this actually focuses. You saw how easily that was scratched. And by nail, I mean my fingernail. Not the big nail, because obviously if you can scratch it with the copper, then you can probably scratch it with the iron nail. You saw how much powder came off there? Yep, very scratchable. And then, it doesn't have any reaction to vinegar as well, which I'll show you guys, even though it's not going to show up very well on camera. For all you know, it could have a strong reaction to vinegar with how good this camera is. But basically, nothing. No reaction whatsoever. And it's very light. Like, well, I almost swore there. I just dropped the rock, so give me a second to pick it up. Back. So basically, you might think that every rock is like very light depending on its size. That's not necessarily true. When we talk about density, we talk about how heavy it is for its size. Like, that has a lot to do with composition and all that. So it's a very light rock. Like, extremely light. Now, in comparison, this rock, which is around a similar size, is heavier. This rock is lighter. So that tells you something about its density, and all those factors in combination lead me to believe that it's limonite. I hope that was enough of a demo for you guys. Just all my kit, That knife is also extremely useful for rock testing, like for hardness testing of rocks out in the field, and obviously for other survival things that I won't get into. But in any case, hope that was enough for now. And you can get your own basically like mineral ID kit, that's what they call it, on Amazon or anywhere else, I imagine. I got it from Amazon. You guys can probably check and find it somewhere else. And it's got some pretty good stuff. So that's just a basic kit. It brings all of that. And it was not very expensive. It was like $20 or something. So yeah. All right. Thank you for dropping by.